Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on the Mark 8.5 Volkswagen Golf GTI Clubsport. As it happens, I haven't driven any of the new 8.5 Golfs, so starting towards the top of the tree with this Clubsport is going to be interesting. The regular GTI is 39.5 grand in the UK. This Clubsport version is going to start at just over £42,000. To put that into some context, I actually had the Mark 8 GTI Clubsport about 3.5 years ago, and the base retail on that was just over 37 grand. So it's gone up 5 grand in the last 3.5 to 4 years. In terms of aesthetics and styling, the 8.5 has had a few minor tweaks, let's call them. The bumper is slightly different, the lower area, especially the splitter, as it were. When you get around the side of the car, well, you've now got badging on the doors. And when you get around the back of the car, the rear light units are slightly different. But otherwise, you'd be hard pushed to tell. This one does have all of the piano black trim. You can see it running along the sills there as well. And up until now, the piano black trim has been reserved for the flagship Golf R. I think it contrasts very well with this white car. Normally a white car would be fantastic this time of year because it would be drizzly and gloomy. But when the sun's out, it's quite hard to capture a white car on the camera. On top of a regular GTI, this has much bigger brakes on the front axle and a locking differential as standard. Under the bonnet, we have the now very familiar EA 888 engine, which is a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged unit. As far as I know, it's unchanged compared to the Mark 8 GTI Clubsport, and it has the same power figures of 300 horsepower. Produces 400 newton meters of torque, and all of that runs through a 7-speed DSG gearbox and is fed through the front axle alone. But remember, this does have a locking front diff as standard, and I'm sure that helps give this car a claimed 0 to 62 time of just 5.6 seconds, which is really impressive for a front-wheel drive hatch. It has a limited top speed of 155 miles an hour unless you tick the GTI Performance Package option, and that lifts it to 166 miles an hour, which is definitely going to be fast enough even if you live in Germany. And I really hope that we can get close to that on one of the Autobahns that are only a couple of miles away. First thing to talk about is the interior, driving position, etc. As I mentioned on the outside, this is the first time I've actually driven a Mark 8.5 Golf. So it's the first time I've experienced the new interior, although it's not really that new because it's just a facelifted car. They have, most importantly, updated and changed the infotainment system. I haven't had any time really to play around with it, but trusted sources I've spoken to say it is massively improved on the Mark 8 version, which is to be expected because that wasn't great, and I'm glad that they listened and improved that. Something else that they've clearly listened to is getting rid of those awful haptic buttons on the wheel and replacing them with normal buttons. This almost feels like a wheel out of the Mark 7 or Mark 7.5 Golf, and that is a good thing. In the press briefing, they also said that their interior trim is real carbon, so I'm assuming in the Mark 8 it was just a plastic bit of trim with like a carbon pattern on it probably. In terms of the seats in the driving position, well, these are the same seats from memory from the Mark 8, and they're very comfortable, very supportive, more supportive in cloth than they would be in leather, so just bear that in mind if that's even an option. This particular German press car is heavily optioned and loaded. It has things like the GTI Performance Package, which lifts the top speed from 155 to 166 miles an hour. We'll hopefully be able to try that out in a bit. That pack also comes with the Akrapovic exhaust, which looks good, sounds pretty good from the outside, I think. But remember, this is a 2024/2025 car, so it has to meet so many sound regulations and standards. There's only so much that Volkswagen can do. This also has Harman Kardon sound, it has a head-up display, so I'm not sure how much of that is going to be standard. And most importantly, as far as I'm concerned, it has DCC, Dynamic Chassis Control. you've got about 15 different settings to play with. That's not going to be a standard option in the UK, but make sure you do tick it, because I've found it to be wonderful in the Mark 8, and in comfort, which we're in now, the car is just floating along this road, and albeit a better quality road than we get in the UK, but still I can feel the quality of the suspension. It feels really good. You wouldn't think you're in a hot hatch in comfort. It feels more like a regular Golf, which is what you want in your GTI especially, but we're going to knock it up into sport and actually special, which is Nürburgring. Just pull the paddle. The DSG box is really, really fast. The issues I've had with the DSG box over the years is, one, that it won't hold gear, but I think there is a certain setting that you can select now that it will hold gear. So when you're out on track, which we're going to do a bit later, it will hold itself in gear and hit the limiter as opposed to change up. But it's when you go to change down, sometimes it won't give you that gear. Even though you know it is possible, it won't give you the gear. It's a little bit lazy on the downshifts. Upshifts are amazing. Seamless, fast. Yeah, really, really good. I love the displays. I haven't driven a Golf GTI or Golf R for 3.5 years, so I've forgotten if that is the same as the dash or the binnacle that you get in the Mark 8, but either way, you can adjust it and play around with different layouts. But like with the Audi RS products, that they've just reintroduced that center rev counter in their latest RS3, etc. I love this rev counter, speed in the middle. I've got a G-force counter on the right. I've got a power or kilowatt gauge on the left. You can adjust and configure all of those, but yeah, it's really nice and clear. Something else this car apparently has is essentially a turbo preload, I think they call it. Very similar, if not identical, to what Audi have done with their latest facelifted S3. Essentially, the turbos spool up a lot quicker, so the throttle response is better, especially if you're in sport or the special Nürburgring mode that I'm in. So tiny little throttle inputs, I can feel it pick up so quickly, like that's sort of a centimetre of throttle input, and I can feel that turbo come in straight away. So it's there and ready, there's no more lag, and that does make a big difference in terms of feel of overall performance. Now, I need to go and find a petrol station, because I somehow managed to pick up a press car that had less than 1/4 of a tank of fuel in it, and if I want to do a couple of high-speed runs, well, we need more fuel than that. I don't want to run out of fuel on the Autobahn. That would be very irresponsible and very annoying, because it would mean that I couldn't get back to drive the Golf R. I'll switch these cameras off and I'll join you on the Autobahn shortly. Right then, we put some fuel in it. Let's see if we can get a clear bit of Autobahn to test out this car's top speed. Well, it feels pretty quick. That's 200 kilometers per hour already. And that's 230. Change gear just before 7,000 RPM, and we're into a 120. Right, we're back into a de-restricted part of the Autobahn. We're sitting at 100 k's an hour, which is 60 odd miles an hour. Third gear, here we go. I'm doing the changing. It's actually in manual plus, which means it will hang on to the gear. Look, rev limiter. And there is 200 kilometers per hour. It's very fast. 220. We're catching up to traffic, so we're going to have to back off soon. There's 246 indicated without any issues at all. Brakes feel good. Brakes feel really good. Remember, this has got upgraded front brakes compared to the regular GTI. They definitely look bigger. They look more ventilated. They look like they mean business, and yeah. It's not until you've been on an Autobahn and you're doing 140, 150 miles an hour and you use brakes for the first time, it's a real telltale sign of whether the brakes are good, because average brakes at those speeds don't feel great, which is probably not surprising. Oh, it looks like we're coming into some roadworks and another 100 zone. when you're on the Autobahn, if you haven't done it before, you've got to look so far ahead and anticipate everyone pulling out on you, especially on a 2-lane Autobahn like this. You really have, and especially with trucks, because obviously they're going, what, 60 miles an hour at most. So if you're doing 160, you're closing in on them at 100 miles an hour. So just remember that. Things happen very quickly on the Autobahn. Here we go. So that's 160, which is 100 miles an hour. It's 200. Feels very stable. Looks like we've got roadworks coming up and into a slow zone. Well, that was just over 260. I wasn't looking at the speed. I just saw it in my peripheral because I was focusing on what was going on way down the road. But I'm in no doubt that this is going to do an indicated 270, which is probably GPS 265 or 267, whatever they have suggested that it would do. Only a few years ago, a hot hatch, you take them above 110, 120 miles an hour, and some of them would start sort of wandering around and not feeling particularly stable. Whereas this, well, big speeds, 150, 160 miles an hour, it felt planted as anything. So that's really, really impressive. Let's go and join me a little bit earlier in a GTI Clubsport. Not exactly the same car, very similar spec. See what it's like out on track, and then you can join me back here for a short conclusion. Right, now we're out on track. Let's see what this Clubsport is like. I'm in Sport. Unfortunately, I have to have the traction in Sport as well, so it does intervene right at the wrong moment. Just as the car feels like it's going to start rotating, everything kind of kicks in. What a wonderful circuit this is. Conditions are perfect. And I'm obviously following an instructor in an R 8.5. The gearbox is still a little bit slow on the downshifts. It's better than it's ever been. Shift times are super quick, and on the way up, I mean, it's a dream, I can't fault it. Just on the way down, it's a little bit slow. Won't give me the gear when I want it. That's 200. That's 200 and just over 210. No worries. We're actually braking quite conservatively through there. See, I think if all the aids are off through there, it would rotate nicely. But yeah, this is this is great. Yeah, just there, it wouldn't give me second. I've actually driven the R earlier, and the R seems to give you the gear when this one doesn't, but maybe it's something that I'm doing wrong. I don't know. It's funny, each instructor has completely different lines around this circuit. This definitely tucks in better than the R, the initial turn in. Obviously it's lighter, so you're going to kind of expect that. I can feel a bit more through the wheel as well. But the traction aids, even through there, fourth gear at 80 miles an hour, the traction control's kicking in. I think we're going to slow it down. Unfortunately, when you've got all of the nanny aids switched on, just as the car, I'll demonstrate here, so just as I'm at the apex and the weight transfer sort of goes to the rear axle, if everything was switched off just coming into that section, coming into the apex, the rear end starts to rotate normally, and I can feel it wants to in this car if you're near the limit. But because the traction and stability is switched on, the car senses it rotating and then pulls it back. So I'm sure it is 50% more fun again with everything switched off. If you've watched my Golf R review from 3.5 odd years ago, the Mark 8, I actually took a UK press car out on a track day, and that's exactly what I talked about. Was with all of the aids switched on, it didn't feel great at all on track. As soon as you switch everything off, it was so much fun. I've been really impressed with this car, and yes, I know this particular press car is probably 46 odd grand with the GTI Performance Pack, things like the DCC, which I think is a must-have option if you're in the UK. It's a lovely place to sit, as was the Mark 8, but now they've improved my two biggest complaints, the infotainment system and the buttons on the wheel. So well done for listening to customers, Volkswagen. It's a better car because of it. It's a better package because the Mark 8 GTI Clubsport was a fantastic bit of driver's kit, but it just had a few things like the infotainment that let it down. So just replacing that is an improvement, but they have improved other things like the initial throttle pickup. In the next couple of months, I will get my hands on a UK press car GTI Clubsport and live with it for a week and give you a proper review, because it's all very well being thrown the keys to one out here, this beautiful sunshine on these really nice roads. I really need to give you my feedback of a right-hand drive version back home in the UK. But so far, I am very impressed. I have liked it and enjoyed my time with it, even though it has been a pretty hectic and rushed day. Guys, if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. It really helps. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you at another one very, very soon. Cheers.